Welcome to The Fix. I'm your host, Brock Bevel. We all struggle with our addictions in life, whether it's sugar addiction, sports addiction, or digital media addiction. There's always temptations that we must face on a daily basis. Today on the show, I have Jashin Howell. Jason, thanks for coming out, man, for making the trip up here from the Valley.
Absolutely.
I hope it's a worthwhile place to be.
You know what? I'm excited to be here. Excited to share a little bit about what I've been up to, and I really love sharing my story. I think that's how we help people change their lives.
Love it. So I just want to jump right into it. Everybody's aware that this show is about addiction. We cover all types of addictions, and the reason you're here is because obviously you're an addict, I'm an addict, and we want to promote awareness in the public. We want everybody to just jump on the bandwagon, the epidemic we're seeing. So if you wouldn't mind, I know that your addiction started at an early age. Can you just kind of briefly talk to us about it?
Sure. I grew up in a single parent home, only child, and I had really no one to kind of teach me the real ways of living life. Most of my family all were addicts. My grandfather was an alcoholic, sexually and physically abused my aunts and uncles, my mom, and so I grew up in this environment where they didn't really know how to parent, and so growing up with no father figure in the home, I think you look at a lot of the people that struggle with addiction, they're missing that one component, both parents in the home. And so for me, that was the case. I started smoking pot when I was 12, 13 years old, got into drinking. Masturbation was actually my first addiction, pornography. And it was the last addiction that I overcame. Actually, sugar is still an addiction. Yeah. So when you talk about sugar, it's still a part of my life. And it's interesting because, as I've gained my addiction over time, it gets worse and progressively worse, and you use harder and harder substances, kind of to mask the feelings and emotions that we don't want to feel. And it ended up, for me, crack cocaine addiction. I was on the streets, age 20, 25, and I didn't know what to do with my life at that time.
What's interesting about your addiction, talk to me about your mom. I know that you lived with her throughout your life, but you actually started using with mom?
Yeah, my mom married a guy that struggled with a drug addiction. He shot cocaine. My mom thought she could change him, but instead joined him. So at age 16, they would party all night long, and for me, I was always on restriction. He'd be out in the backyard thinking my friends were back there, and he's just on this trip, and I hated the drug. I said, Mom, you're going to either get rid of him or I'm leaving. I ended up leaving, and
at 16?
Yeah, at 16. And she woke up to the fact that, hey, this is my son, I love him, and I don't want to raise him this way. And then at that time, my friends were getting into, using drugs and getting into heavier stuff more than pot. We were starting to smoke or snort cocaine. And I started dealing it, and I was able to deal to my parents and get away with whatever I wanted. It was kind of cool that my parents used drugs,
so
right?
The friends came to your house,
absolutely, yeah. And so I started using with my mom, and that's when it really got worse. I actually was selling to people that smoked cocaine. And I had never done that before, and they were going through it so quickly, and I'm like, gosh, how do you go through it so quickly? Yeah. And so I was intrigued, tried it myself, and I was hooked from that point on. I went from instant dealer to user, and my life just went downhill from there.
So you were using with your mom. How weird had that had to be weird?
Yeah, I've used with both my parents, so it was interesting, but it wasn't anything new, I guess, because it was just how I grew up. I used with my uncles. I smoked pot with them, and that's who I was originally kind of introduced to a lot of this stuff, was seeing and watching them do it. It wasn't something that they hid from me.
So tell me about, so I know your story, but the public doesn't know your story. Sure. I know it seems like you go through these stints of okay, I'm sober now, I'm good now, and then I'm relapsing, now I'm good now, and I keep going through these stints. Tell me a little bit about it, because I know you actually went to get away from it a little bit. Your junior year, you stopped using.
Yep. Yeah, so my junior year I stopped using, and that was right around the time that I made my mom choose between me or my stepdad. And I was always good in school, very smart, and And I got straight A's that junior year, and yet there was something inside of me that always made me feel like I wasn't enough. And came down to, you know, experiences that I had as a child where I felt abandoned by my mom. And just looking at her, I think there was a lot of disrespect for how my mom raised me. And I just didn't feel like I was worth it, you know, and not having a dad in the home, you feel worthless. And so for me, it was deep-seated shame and guilt around who I was. So I'd be good for a little bit. I'd be good in school, sports, selling, whatever I was doing, I was good at. But deep down inside, I didn't feel like I was worth anything. So then I would go use, something would trigger, either good or bad. You know, it didn't matter what it was. I just didn't know how to deal with my emotions.
Did you feel like, because we've talked about like it's a reward, you know, everything is going good. You're like, oh, I can handle this. And then you go reward yourself.
And you go reward yourself, you know, and then you go and you use, and then next thing you know, you're up all night. And then you're up all the next day, and then you're up all the next night. And it's like, and that's what would happen. It's like, once I started using, I didn't want to go back. So I'd be literally gone 3-4 days. And the longest time was 10 days. And that was when I finally gave God a chance, was after 10 days of being out on the streets and figuring everybody had just given up on me. And I remember being in a Taco Bell, and I saw a guy pray over his food. And it reminded me of a conversation I had 9 months prior with someone that said that I needed to find God. And that, you know, and I hadn't talked to her in like 13 years. She calls me up out of the blue and says, you know, the Spirit's telling me that you're ready to receive, you know, God in your life. And so for me, I'm like, oh, okay, well, you know.
So what'd you do with it?
I didn't take any action on it right away. And this was when I moved to Wisconsin to get away from all my associations.
So you go from Arizona to Wisconsin, and Wisconsin was Dad, right?
Yeah, Wisconsin was where my dad lived. And so I figured, you know, this is where, you know, I'm probably going to finally get over this because I never had my dad in my life.
That's going to fill that void.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that emptiness.
It's finally going to, you know, make it so that I'm okay again, right? Or okay, period. But it turned out that wherever I went, there I still was. Nothing in my life changed except my location. And so,
okay, so hold on. That's such a cliche in the addiction recovery world. But what's interesting, there's psychologists all over the place that say you got to change your people, persons, places, and things.
Right.
But here you are. You move completely to Wisconsin. No change.
Right. Yeah, no change, because I got into the same behaviors, same people, you know. I was attracting the same people into my life. I didn't change who I was inside until I found God, right? And realized that I could be forgiven, because I had a child at that time that wasn't a part of my life because of my addiction. Right? She was in Turkey with her mom and stepdad, and he's in the military, so he was in the Air Force stationed over there. And, you know, she understood why I wasn't in her life. But for me, it's like I'm feeling all this guilt and shame because I'm doing the exact same thing that my dad did with me, which was not being there, right?
Yeah. So you go to Wisconsin. How quick did you start finding those same type people in Wisconsin?
Almost immediately. You know, because once I got back into the circle of working, I worked in the health club industry. And the health club is just rampant with, especially the people that work there. You know, a lot of the trainers, personal trainers, they're all doing some kind of drug or a substance just to get their bodies into you know, certain shape and have the energy to be able to sustain the levels that they're trying to get to, and so a lot of them struggle with addiction. And so I found myself into the same loops that I was before, and looking for drugs on the streets again after I couldn't, you know, deal with emotions again beat myself up over where my life's at. You know, it's not where I want it to be, and so the addictive cycle just kept hitting me over the head.
So you leave Wisconsin, you head to Tucson.
Head back to Tucson.
Head to Tucson, try to get back to your roots.
Yep.
What happens in Tucson? So
I had actually joined a church in Wisconsin, and so I felt like a sense of strength, you know, and hope is really what I felt more than anything. But there was this level of not good enough that kept showing up for me, because you see all these people that are, you know, members of the church or whatever congregation you're going to, and you think that they're perfect, right? And here I am, this guy that was a drug addict, sex addict, you name it. I had all these addictions, and now I'm baptized in this free from everything. It just didn't work that way for me. And so when I made my way back to Tucson, I tried to help some of my friends find God too. And I put myself in situations where it was probably me looking for a way to use again, I think, because I allowed one of my friends to come over one time, and he came over with drugs, alcohol. I let him into my home, and he sat across from me and said, "I don't think you've changed." And I proved it to him by using with him that night. And I had been pretty good, you know, clean from the hard stuff. And that night when I used, it would have been better that I had never had that relationship with God, because the guilt and shame and feelings that I had were that much worse, and my addiction got that much worse.
So this trend that we're seeing, did you ever identify it? Did you ever notice it happening, or do you look back and now look at it and say, man, I saw these red flags, but I couldn't do anything about it?
The cycle of addiction was always very apparent to me. Good for a month, then I would use. Good for another month, and then I would use. It was I don't know why I did it that way, other than the fact that I believed in myself enough to change my life, yet there was something that didn't believe that I was worth it, you know, and there was no self-love. And that's what I really realized was missing, was, you know, having God in my life was one thing, but forgiving myself for the things that I'd done in the past was another thing.
I know before we started, you said there's still family members that haven't forgiven you for your past.
Yeah, one actually lives here in Show Low, and I'm still blamed and accused of things that I did in the past. And you know, it's been 20 years now, 20 plus years, and it's like,
nice. When
am I ever going to get beyond it with them? You know what I mean? I'm already beyond it with myself, and that's all that really matters anyway.
Do you still feel it though? Do you still feel that maybe the anger for people that can't just?
It's not so much anger. It's more because I understand there's a level of hurt that I think exists for them, and it's not so much what I did. I think it's level of hurt on where they're at in their life, and not really forgiving my grandfather. So it has nothing really to do with me. I'm just the only living outward expression of what that represented, I guess. And all of them struggle with a lot of the same types of addictions too. So
you say you have 20 years sober.
Uh-huh.
Do you still feel like tomorrow you could relapse?
I actually feel like I still relapse, not with hard drugs. Sugar does the exact same thing to the brain that cocaine does, right? Digital devices create that dopamine hit in the brain, just like cocaine does. So we're still getting our fix. Food, same thing, you know what I mean? Overeating. So it's like I'm still using vices, it's just not as bad as it was, right? And I come out of the comas, you know, when you think about it, you eat sugar, man, I go through this thing where my wife is very healthy, right? And so she wants to make sure that I'm eating healthy. But what do? I'll eat, you know, just despite sometimes, you know, what her desires are, because I don't like being controlled. I don't know, there's something to that with it, but I won't go back to my old addictions as long as I stay out of the circles where those addictions are.
So
I can't go in those environments. I can't be around those environments.
Good. So I'm excited to talk, because when we come back from the break, we're going to come back and talk about digital addictions, and I know that you're kind of an expert on it right now in your field, so we'll come back and we'll discuss that.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Welcome back to The Fix. I'm your host, Brock Bevel, and still with Jason. And Jason, we left off in the last segment talking about digital addictions. I'm excited. I know that you're currently involved in this massive project down in the valley. It's the FAM
project.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you some time to discuss it, because I'm really excited. And if you could touch on the digital addiction, that what our kids are going through. I know we have similar age kids, and it's a struggle, man.
Well, it's a struggle because we as parents aren't parenting anymore. we give kids a digital device between ages 2 and 7. Those are the formative years. Simon Sinek wrote a book called Start With Why. He was interviewed by Tom Ballou, who created Quest bars, and he's always asked the millennial question. And the millennial question is this. Basically, what is going on with the millennium today, right? What are these millennials doing? They're totally addicted to their phones and all of this stuff. And he's like, this is a parenting problem. We give our kids a device, you know, and we have age restrictions on alcohol, we have age restrictions on tobacco and gambling, yet we freely give our kids these digital devices between these very formative years, and it creates the exact same response in the brain that those other substances do, and hardcore substances, which is create dopamine in the brain.
So you're talking from your addiction, you have tons of experience,
Yes.
and you're saying the same addiction to the cell phone use is what you experienced with crack cocaine.
It's affecting our kids today more than anything else. The addictions of today are digital in nature. Between ages 2 and 7, we, as a nanny tool, are giving them to our kids, you know, because we don't want to parent anymore.
Just to keep them quiet.
Easy to, you know, put them in front of a screen. Between ages 8 and 11, these same kids that are on these devices are introduced to pornography. The 10 and under age group represents 22% of online porn consumers 18 and under.
Wow.
22%.
Wow. At
It's
what, under 10?
Under 10.
Man.
So we're giving our kids a digital device between 2 and 7. They're introduced to pornography, another highly addictive substance. And the adult industry is actually targeting our kids today through the apps and the different games and everything that our kids are on. And they want to raise the next generation of users. It's a huge industry for them. And so when you think about it, between ages 8 and 11, they're introduced to this pornography addiction, and most people think it's affecting our men, our boys, right? But it's not. It's actually a girl problem too. We have a very close friend of ours that their daughter was introduced to pornography at age 14. By age 20, they had a full-blown sex addiction. Her parents didn't know anything about it. Girls, it's harder for them because they don't know how to talk to their parents about this. They think that they're the only ones that are dealing with these problems, and that it's a boy problem, so they're not going to say anything because they're embarrassed and ashamed of it.
Yeah, but even in my addiction, I didn't want to talk to people about it. I was ashamed, and so I understand. I mean, cell phone's so normal.
That's right, absolutely. And pornography is one of those things that's like, you don't want to talk about it, but I think we have to today. Right? We have to talk about these things, especially with our kids, because they're growing up around it, and it's going to be, they're going to learn it, they're going to learn about it from someone. It better be the parents that teach them about it. So
talk to me about it. How would you broach that subject with your kid? I mean, my kids, they understand addiction because dad's an addiction. I can explain it. It makes it simple. But what happens if they don't understand addiction? How do you broach that topic with your 14-year-old daughter?
Well, no, you talk to them about it before they're 14.
There you go.
When they're 8, you know, even younger than that. The time that you think that you shouldn't be talking to your kids about this stuff is the time that you should be talking to your kids about this stuff.
Okay, say that again. I like that. Say it again.
The time that you don't think that you should be talking to your kids about this stuff is the time that you should be talking to your kids.
Because it's past. They're already full-blown.
They're already introduced to this stuff. And we got to understand that by giving them full access, most parents don't even have any type of protection or monitoring tools on the phones. They have full access to the internet. And they're going to be able to get into things that you don't want them to get into. So you need to teach them to be smart phone users and not used by smartphones.
I mean, I remember, sex addict as well, and I remember the pornography that I experienced when I was a young kid versus the pornography of today is absolutely different.
Totally different.
Man.
Well, and here's the thing, and let's take it even a bit further. Operation Underground Railroad is an organization that fights sex trafficking.
Sure.
There's 6 million modern-day slaves in the world today. 2 million are actually used for sex trafficking, right? And it's huge in the valley. And I know you were in the force there for a long time, and there's a lot of different sting operations that go to help fight, you know, the supply side of sex trafficking, especially with children. Most of the demand for child sex comes from our country. what's interesting is when Tim Ballard, who started Operation Underground Railroad, when he would interview the perpetrators, people wanting child sex, he would ask them, how in the world could you think that this is okay? All of them had the same answer. Well, it started off with nude magazines, and it turned into an online porn addiction, and it got more hardcore because I wasn't getting the same dopamine hit that I was before. Next thing you know, the subjects got younger. Next thing you know, I had to act it out, and so then I'm looking and I'm trying to groom kids online, acting like I'm a 12-year-old boy or girl online just so I can get a boy or girl to do something, right? So this is what the addiction starts to do, and unfortunately, if we're starting our kids with a digital addiction, that turns into a porn addiction, and if our country is already the highest demand for child sex, are we going to make more of a demand with the way that we're raising our kids today? You know, so this is really a parenting problem. It's a parenting problem, but it's also a parenting solution.
Yeah.
So if parents would take more responsibility for what's going on in their own homes, and parents are just as addicted as their kids are. Sure, we use the phones for business, but guess what? Our kids are telling us, hey, look, I see you on your phone, but you're a hypocrite.
Right.
You know, it's like you're telling me to get off of my phone.
But yet I go back in my room,
you're
over there watching
on
Facebook.
Your phone,
yeah.
right? You know, and so there's this relationship that's disconnecting us and our kids.
So you can, man, I've taken my phone from my kids before, and it was a war.
Right.
It's a battle.
Absolutely.
You know, because I didn't realize, now I kind of putting two to two together, but they actually withdraw from their cell phone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They're getting a dopamine hit from it. You got to understand the likes that are on the social media. All of this stuff creates dopamine in the brain. When you tell your kid to get off of the phone, the first thing they say is, I don't know what else to do.
Yes.
We don't have alternatives for our kids.
Keep my streaks.
That's right.
I got to keep my streaks alive. Yes.
Exactly.
Man.
And what's interesting with Snapchat is that you know where these kids are. They know where all their friends are. So guess what? If all their friends are congregating somewhere and they're not there, how does that make a child feel, right?
But if your friends know where you're at, so do the perpetrators.
So absolutely. That's another
that's
main issue.
Deal.
Right. So there's a lot of things that are going on today that we have to realize and be more aware of. And so that's what the FAM project is really all about. Family Awareness Movement. Create awareness around this. Let's shine a light on it, because the only way to dispel anything is to shine light on it.
Okay.
Not be in the dark anymore. And when you think about addiction, addiction is isolated connection. You're isolated connecting with something, right? But you're doing it by yourself. If it's a device, digital device, if it's pornography, you're doing it by yourself. If it's substance abuse, you're doing it by yourself.
Yes.
You're not doing it socially. The antidote to addiction is connection and alternatives. You know, and when I've seen some of your shows, and a lot of them talk about having to change what was around their environment, right?
Yeah.
And so you need to mix things up. You need to create alternatives in your life. If you're going to take something and extract something out of your life, you need to replace it with something else. So what are you going to replace it with? And so for me, I'm selfish like you. You're doing this show because you want to stay sober.
Absolutely.
And you want to help other people do the same thing. I'm doing the FAM project because I want to save my family. I was seeing that me and my wife were disconnected, that once kids got entered into the scene and entered the scene, and mind you, when me and my wife got married, I was only a year and a half sober. So she got the worst of me at the beginning, you know, still not knowing how to deal with my emotions, and learning, you know, by you know, being married with her.
Yeah.
You know, there was a lot of deep-seated stuff that we're dealing with right now. So connection is really key, especially with the parent connection. That spousal relationship's the most important relationship in the family setting.
Does the FAM project teach that? If I went to the FAM project, do you show parents, because that dialogue is epic.
Absolutely.
That dialogue is deep. Like, do you guys teach parents how to talk to their kids? Is there a way that
we're all about? There's people already out there that are doing things. We just want to be a platform where we can all learn from each other. There's some parents that are doing great things, and they might be, you know, not doing so well in some areas of their life, right? And so we can all learn from each other, because it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. everybody's different. Everybody's going to learn different. Every family dynamic is different. What might work for one family might not work for another. So what we do is we bring everybody together. There's people that are experts in this area. We don't create everything. We just expose you to the people that are actually making a difference, like you.
I like that.
Yeah.
So what happens? So I guess my question is, like, we're doing the same thing. We're helping spread this information, but what happens next? That's where that's where my mind's going, is now that you're sober, now that you're talking to your kids, what's the next step to sobriety in the home with the phones? And
well, it starts with the parents, right? What's the most important relationship? The spousal relationship. It's what precedes kids, and it's what succeeds kids, right? So after kids are gone, what's left?
Mom and dad.
Mom and dad,
yeah.
You know? But what happens when you add kids to the mix, mom and dad takes back seat, right? You stop working on the relationship and you focus on the parent-child relationship. And you need to continue to work on the spousal relationship, because our kids are looking at us at how to connect. The reason why our kids aren't social today is because we aren't social today.
So teach me how to do it. Teach me how to do it. My kids have cell phones. I'm taking their cell phones, and we're going to go out and we're going to
play games. You got to have other things to do, right?
That replacement theory.
You got to have something to replace it. And so what we've been doing is playing card games. We've been going outside. We played Ultimate Frisbee is now our new fun game to do. And it's great because it gets us exercising. You know, we're doing things as a family. We're hiking. We just did a hike the other day. We brought our food up, so we ate dinner up in the mountains.
Love that.
You know, it's just doing different things like that, getting creative. You know, we have products that are all about helping create connection. Fam Fun Pass is one of our products that we're coming out and launching in the middle of May, and it gives alternatives. It gives discounts to family-friendly venues like bounce houses and bowling and movie theaters, and just different things that families can do to get out of the house, spend more time together.
Love that.
You know, and so anyway, we just want to make it so that parents have alternatives to the digital device, and they understand the importance of it.
So if I need to get a hold of you, how do I get a hold of you?
You go to thefamproject.com.
Okay.
That's where, you know, all of our stuff is being built and created right now. We're just in the beginning stages of this. We're looking for people to work with that want to make a difference in their own family's life, but then help other families do the same thing. And so this is the movement that we're doing. It's the Fam Project, man. That's what it's all about.
Man, we love it. I appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely.
Thank you for watching The Fix. I'm Brock Bevel. If you know somebody who is struggling with addiction or affected by addiction, there's hope. There's always help out there. Please don't give up. You're important, and your life matters to us. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.